Hi there, this is attorney Sivonnia DeBarros, the protector of athletes, back again with a new episode of What Are You Sporting About? Before we jump in, let me just reintroduce myself to some. My name again is Sivonnia DeBarros. I am the protector of athletes, the founder of the S.L. DeBarros Law Firm, where we represent 6 and 7 figure business owners in employment, sports, and entertainment in athletes and business. So I am also the founder of this amazing podcast, What Are You Sporting About?, where we aim to educate, motivate, and support you to your very next level. And today we have an amazing guest on board, Danielle Berman. And before we bring her totally into the whole spiel of what we're going to be talking about, let me just introduce this amazing young woman to you guys, okay? Danielle, first off, is just such a sweet person because she invited me on her platform, Tackle What's Next, and we just had a great time. So here we are, two podcasters showing favor, which is truly a gem in her own right. Danielle has dedicated her career to helping athletes understand their full potential. She works to provide athletes with resources and communities to help them succeed in all aspects of their lives. And we love that. We need that. Her focus on the athlete as an individual rather than a cog in the sports industry machine has helped her create unique opportunities and impact in the sports space. So through Tackle What's Next, which is her podcast platform, Danielle works to provide athletes of all ages, sports, and circumstance the opportunity to focus on creating impact and finding purpose in life after sports. She founded Tackle What's Next with the goal of providing athletes with a safe space to discuss the challenges of transitioning out of sports, as well as share resources that can help. Danielle is a super connector, love that. She finds so much joy in connecting people to the contacts and resources they need to reach their goals. So if that wasn't enough, check this out. Danielle is also passionate about educating athletes and nonprofits on the best ways to work together to create social impact rather than recreating the wheel of competing against like-minded initiatives. She aims to encourage athletes and nonprofits to work together and bridge the gap between sports and philanthropy to create sustainable community impact. That right there is already a mouthful. And we're going to talk about some more of the amazing things that Danielle does and has recently created. But welcome to the show, Danielle.
Thank you so much for having me and for that amazing introduction. I really appreciate being here. And like you said, it was so much fun to chat on our show a few weeks back, and excited to do it again.
Yes, ma'am. And I love this because, and I always say to people, when you work in your purpose, right, the dots always connect. Mm-hmm. You end up finding the right people that you need to carry things forward. And the beauty about working in your purpose too is that the common thread of what everyone is doing, it's so interconnected. Like even the things that you're passionate about and why you created Tackle What's Next also is similar to what Are You Sporting About was created for. Educating these athletes so that they can move away from all of the hindrances that they walk themselves into, or the environmental issues that are created that keep them from realizing their true gifts, right? Mm-hmm. So aside from what I've already said about Tackle What's Next, why did you create Tackle What Matters? So talk about that and how that also connects with the Tackle What's Next platform.
Yeah, absolutely. Tackle What Matters really came out of a desire to really support athletes in their impact work and seeing a lot of missed opportunities. I think we think a lot about athletes starting nonprofits, and that's great. But as you know, Sivonnia, there's a lot of legal and financial hindrances to doing that, and some issues you could get yourself into if you don't do it right or you don't know what you're doing. And I think it's a limiting opportunity. Of those that have the funds and the resources to do it, it's amazing, and you should absolutely follow that path. But for those that maybe don't see their purpose as being a nonprofit executive or founder, there's many other ways to give back, and there's millions of nonprofits here in this country alone that would absolutely love to partner and work together and support their mission. So just being able to facilitate those connections, like you mentioned, I love connecting people that have similar interests or similar purposes, and It came just from seeing so many missed opportunities, or just, a lack of education in, okay, here are all the different things I could do using my brand, using my name, using my platform as an athlete to create impact. And so it really ties into tackle what's next, and what we founded to support transition for athletes, because a lot of times your first foray in off the field or off the court endeavors is giving back to the community. Could be a team volunteer program, could be a nonprofit event that your pro team sets up, or a friend of yours invites you to. But a lot of times that's the first time you realize that there's life beyond. There's other things going on outside of you playing sports. And I think that's where it really ties in to that purpose that you guys talk about. What are you sporting about? I think a lot more athletes are starting to think about, what am I sporting about? What can I do with this platform? And so I think it really does tie into your next chapter. And we really want it to tie in, obviously, and try to make sure that all athletes have a plan to not only be successful in their careers, but also to create really great impact in wherever they want to see that change. So I think it's a really natural fit, just based on how a lot of athletes experience life beyond sports over their careers.
Yeah, I agree. And it's just amazing how that conversation really connects itself, because once you find out what you're sporting about, your purpose in this life, then you can truly dig in and tackle what's next. But then what matters, what really, really matters to you. And like you said, there's so many different people, especially, and we're talking about athletes specifically on this platform, but there's so many athletes who do want to give back, who do want to make a great impact in the world or their community, but they don't have the proper resources or the education to do so. And some people take certain steps that are really not going to push the ideals that they have forward, right? It can completely set them back. So having a incubator like that is really, really important, because I always tell people, this is one reason why I wanted to create the What Are You Sporting About, and connect with different professionals to create a team of professionals for the athlete overall, because you just having a business is one part of it, right? Yeah. You being the owner of that business is one part of it. And one thing you brought up is, what about the attorney? And I always educate folks and say, look, if you're not protecting yourself in different aspects, you're leaving yourself open to some major issues that are possibly going to happen if they're not already happening, right?
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, the best intentions can go wrong very quickly. So as an athlete too, in the public eye, again, even if you're really not in the public eye, but you're an athlete, there's going to be an article that comes out, star, gymnast at XYZ college starts nonprofit and defrauds from X, Y, and Z.
Right.
Even if it's not your intention, right? If you don't have that support, that team you mentioned,
right,
just the resources, it can go wrong, and you have no control over the narrative, right? It's
right.
You can't control what they post and share on the internet.
Yep. And that's why having a team is great, because if you have like an identity crisis issue or something like that, like how will we just, I don't know, label it branding or something. But if you had some type of branding or reputation professional on your team, that's something that you can quickly see, having people do searches on your name or profiles or whatever, so that they can immediately go in, talk with whoever's put up the content, see what you can do, and sometimes people aren't going to take the content down, but if you just have one negative review, what's one negative review against 100 positive things that you've done? You know what I'm saying? Like it doesn't add up. So that takes me into a different thing, a different sector of what you're doing, because I recently saw this too on LinkedIn with the Big League Philanthropist podcast. Yes. So amazing.
Thank you.
There's someone that I know that you've had on there, Renee Montgomery. So shout out to Renee if you're listening to this episode. Renee was one of the first live people that I had on the What Are You Sporting About podcast. So that was really, really cool.
Awesome. That's great.
She is amazing. But what inspired you to create the Big League Philanthropist podcast?
Yeah, I think it goes back to why we created Tackle What Matters, is really to highlight the great work athletes are doing in the community specifically, and share stories. I think it's helpful not only for athletes to understand the opportunities that are out there in general, but to hear from their peers on, oh my gosh, wow, this guy's in his second year of a pro and he has this amazing initiative he partnered with an organization on. So we've talked to Renee, we've talked to nonprofit executive directors that used to play in college sports. We've talked to NFL players, we've talked to baseball players, MLB players. And I think the idea is to show that, there's a lot of different ways to be a philanthropist. One of the questions we ask all of our guests is, what does the word philanthropist mean to you? And everyone's given a different answer. And I think that's the unique part about it, is there's not just one way. There's lots of different ways. It depends on who you are, which again ties back into, what are you sporting about? Tackle what's next. You have to understand, who are you? And that's hard. Like, it's not easy. It's not going to happen like tomorrow. You're going to figure it out. It takes a lot of time and like soul searching to really figure that out. But we really wanted to just highlight that platform. And we've also found that a lot of, folks in the philanthropy space learn a lot from listening to this podcast about what the athletes are doing and just better ways to engage. So we're hopeful that it's a resource both for the nonprofit world and for athletes that are interested in starting something or bringing impact in, just to hear from their peers on what they're doing.
Yeah. And that's amazing, because we also don't want athletes or former athletes to think that they need the sport itself to be a philanthropist.
Right.
Because sports or being an athlete is one aspect of who you are. Right. And so you can always do great things, but also do great things with a purpose. So if doing something is not what your purpose or your calling is, it may not be the right fit for you. But I do truly love this. And I think it's going to help a lot of people, because it is going to not only highlight impact, but show people that they can have impact on and off the field, court, whatever, that sport may be. But I want to kind of go back to what he's sporting about, because you mentioned how those two things roll into one. And this is a question I always like to pose to my guests, is what does what he's sporting about mean to you? You kind of answered it, but I want you to answer that one directly.
Yeah, no, I love the question. And I think the name of your show is so important for everyone to think about. You mentioned like, this isn't just something athletes need to think about, but this is obviously geared towards athletes. So I'll direct my answer that way. But really it's about why are you doing this to me? And I think people don't necessarily take the time to sit down and say, why am I playing basketball? Why am I playing soccer? Why am I, competing or trying to get into the Olympics? Why? And the answer of, because I like it, like all those answers are great, but keep asking the question. What is the purpose? What is drawing me to it? Is it the team, the people, the connections, the competition? Because finding out why and what are you sporting about, what's your purpose, is actually going to help you move to the next level successfully. If you can figure that out, and again, it's not easy, but if you can figure out what are you sporting about, which essentially to me equates to, why are you doing it? What's the point, right? And a quick blunt question, like, what's the point of putting all this effort in and all this time in, of dedicating your life to being an athlete? What is the point? And there has to be one, right? And I think it's just important to discover what that is. So to me, it's a really important question that, again, this isn't just applying to athletes, but anyone going into a career, what are you doing it for? What's your purpose? But I think athletes really do have that opportunity to use that career to leverage a whole new one after they're done. And I think it's important to understand, what do you love about it? What are you doing this for? And help that push you to whatever's next for you. So yeah.
No, that was very well said. Because and one of the things that you love to do and find passion in doing is also educating athletes for transitioning, right? And if you pose that question to yourself of, what am I sporting about? It can get so deep, right?
Yeah.
It can become deeper than the sport that you are currently in, and more of a spiritual question in a sense. Like, what is this whole life about? And I think sometimes individuals think surface level, and not truly dive into figure out what everything is set up and made for, but especially athletes who are finding themselves in the transitional phase out of sports or going to prepare themselves soon to transition out of sports. That's going to be a very, very serious question, because it's going to show you, have you used the space that you're in now to help set up life for you later, right? Yep. Have you done everything that you needed to do while you were in that moment so that transitioning will be a joyful experience?
Yeah.
You're gonna cringe at because now the sport is over, my career is over with that. Yeah. So I definitely appreciate you for saying that, because it is always going to be why am I even doing this? How is this helping me?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think you brought up a good point too of, you want this to be an opportunity, not something that's happening to you, but something that you get to take advantage of. And so I'm a big proponent of looking at things in a positive light, because no offense to, even if you're the best athlete in the world right now, like, you're gonna leave sports. It's gonna happen. So it's not even like a plan B. It's a plan A.1, right? Like, even if you make it and you play for 15 years, you're going to be 35 or 40 and you're going to be like, okay, like, now what? And I think people look at it as like, oh my God, like, how disappointing, I have to leave and this sucks and everything's, the worst. But to your point, if you think about, well, why am I doing this? Was I doing this just because I love basketball or I love soccer or I love football? Probably not. That's probably not the only reason, because if that was the only reason, think about all the people that love sports, right? That aren't athletes, because they don't have that why driving them. And I think that's really where athletes can have that advantage of like, look, this is what's been motivating me. Maybe it's my family. Maybe it's my desire to work X, Y, and Z, or to get myself to this point, or because I love competition and I live for it. Like, it can't just be, I'm a big basketball person, because you would have quit a long time ago, right? It wouldn't have kept you interested. So to your point, like, thinking about that question is going to take a long time to answer, but hopefully turn the opportunity into a joyful experience of, wow, look what this sport gave me the opportunity to try to dig into. And I think your point is, make sure you're prepared, because you're never more relevant than when you're playing. You're never more relevant.
Yep. And then, to also understand that we evolve as people. We change. The things that we think we want changes. Our purpose, I can't really even say the purpose changes. When you find the purpose, I think the purpose also evolves along with you. You know what I'm saying? But even with that, when you're going through those different stages, you still have to seek clarity on what you're sporting about. What really is the mission of everything that I'm doing? Because as an athlete, the space that you're in is a mechanism, is another tool to help you not only define your purpose, but now to live in your purpose, right? And to help other people with that purpose. So do you have any advice for athletes who are worried about making an impact, worrying about whether they don't know if they have purpose, and feeling anxiety with the potential transitioning out of sports?
I mean, I think it's natural to feel scared and anxious, right? It's an unknown, and you're leaving a world that you have gotten very familiar with and going into a new one. I think people put a lot of pressure on, like, follow your passion. And you see that all the time, like, just do what you love, right? Just do what you love. But if you don't know what you love, or you can't do what you love, because what you love is sport, and now you can't, I think that's a really hard path to direct someone down. And I love that you keep saying purpose and not passion, because passion is fleeting, right? You might love something one day and then you're sick of it and you're like, screw it, I don't really care about this anymore. But also, it's hard to make a living out of passion. People are always drawn to, like, the cool things to do, like, oh, I want to start a sneaker company, or I want to start a media conglomerate, or I want to start a podcast. Like, everybody's got a podcast now. There's a million travel bloggers, cooking shows, cooking bloggers, mommy bloggers. Like, there are tons. So unless you're gonna be the absolute best and have a huge following, it's going to be hard to create a career out of that.
Mm-hmm.
And so I love that you say purpose, because it's not necessarily what the job is, it's what the result is. What are you doing with that job? And so my advice would be, don't necessarily look at, you know, I want to work at this company, or I want to work at, you know, in this specific media section, or I want to start this company. Think about, what impact do I want to make, right? Do I want to help, you know, bring in more diverse business owners? Maybe I start a bunch of companies and I start hiring, you know, minority owners that can come in and run my businesses. And that's my purpose, right? Is to give people a platform. So I think, you know, maybe I want to see more women in tech. Okay, great. Maybe I work in tech, get to a point where I can start to hire women on my team, you know? And I think people start to think, oh, well, that's going to take a lot of work. Yes, it is. Like it's there's nothing, again, unless you are the 1% that's making millions and millions of dollars and you can pay people to do the work for you, you're going to have to do the work. And I think that's the scary part, but it also means that you're in control of your own destiny. So if you do the work, if you think about what are you sporting about, and don't get caught up in like the passion, the cool, like the social media, you know, the viral, like that's not going to get you there. What's going to get you there is thinking, what do I actually want to see happen? What purpose do I want to make? And how can I do that? What vehicle can I use to do that? And it might be a legal job. As you know, as a lawyer, it's not all glamorous. Like there's a lot of paperwork, there's a lot of boring conversations, right? Yeah. And I think people are like, oh, it must be so cool. And you get to do this, and you get to do that. Sure, that's a part of it, but there's a lot of hard work to get you to those points. And so I think making sure you understand that it's less about the exact job title you have and the exact career you're in. There you go. But really more about the purpose of, what are you accomplishing? What are you changing with that? What are you doing with that? So less pressure on what exactly you're doing and more pressure on like what's changing, what purpose, what results are you bringing in? Because you could be in IT and be making a massive impact and nobody knows your name, but you're doing so much cool stuff and you're loving it because you've got free time, you've got income, and you're using that to do all these other things. So I think people get caught up in like the cool, the glitzy, the glam, but follow what you're good at. Honestly, that's what I would say. Look at your strengths versus your passion.
Girl. All of that, okay? All of that. All of that. People get so hung up on the titles. The titles. Oh my gosh, it's so true. And this brings me back to a memory from high school. So I was in cheerleading, ran track. And I remember, so every year we had tryouts and everything, but I can't remember what grade I was in at this point, but every year you have these new people who want to try out and they're, you know, want to pritz and prance around campus and be cute. And I remember saying something to somebody. I was like, look, this is real business. You know, this is our team. We're super competitive. This is not about being cute. And I think when we talk about titles and in the corporate America or with athletes or whatever, people are so hung up with being cute that they forget about the impact that they actually want to leave. Yeah. Right? I didn't want to create a podcast. I didn't want extra work to do. You know what I'm saying? But it was a mechanism for me with this book. You guys see this book in the corner, what he's sporting about, the conversations in this book. I said, I need a platform for these conversations to live because it brings up so much stuff that people need something more than the last page to talk about. Like there's impact that I want to make. What mechanism can I use to make the impact? And it's not always glamorous. When I started, I'm still figuring out the kinks and everything in running a podcast, but people get so hung up in the titles. Oh, I'm this. Oh, I'm that. Like you said, with being a lawyer, it's beautiful at times, but it's also has its ugly moments, right? It's boring sometimes. People said to me, oh, if you want to represent athletes, you should become an agent. I'm like, I don't want to become an agent. Because where would I fulfill my purpose in being an agent? You know what I mean? It's just carrying another title that's not going to make impact for me, right? The impact that I want to make for the people that I want to serve. So, Danielle?
Well, and I will say, like, this has taken me years to learn, right? Coming out of college, I was like, oh, I want to work in sports. I want to do this. I want to do that. And it was all about how cool would that be? How awesome would that be? there were things that I absolutely hated about working in sports, like in a kind of front office brand team side, that I was like, this isn't very fun. But I also learned a lot from working for a consulting firm about what I really was good at and what I really wanted to do. And the only reason I'm an entrepreneur right now, there's no way if you had told me at like 24 that I'd be running my own business, I would have been like, absolutely not. There's no way. But for exactly what you said, it was the vehicle for me. And it's hard. Like there are days where I'm like, why am I doing this? And I have to go back to, here's is the impact I want to make. And this is my platform to do it. And so I think, any athletes listening, it's so much less about what your LinkedIn title is or what your, what position you are in the company. Way more important with how are people talking about you? How are people saying, oh my God, Sivonnia is the best? I mean, case in point, anytime Sivonnia comes up in conversation, people are like, oh my God, I love her. She's the best. Really? She did this for me. Yes, 100%.
I will pop it right now.
It's exactly my example of like, even when you're not in the room, people are creating those relationships for you and just building your brand of this is what she does for me. This is how she's making an impact. And I think that's what athletes need to focus on is it's really not about your social media followers. It's not about what your bio is online or how many hits you got on this post you made. It's about like, what are people saying when you're not there? Wow. What an incredible or fantastic person. This is what they did for me. This is what they're trying to do. You should connect with them.
Yeah.
That's so much more powerful than a tweet that gets 100,000 likes.
So powerful. So powerful. Ladies and gentlemen, Danielle Berman, coming in and drop the mic today. For real. So,
oh my God.
Look, I am so glad though that you agreed to come onto this podcast because apparently it definitely did need your voice. And I'm glad that we were able to connect. And I really, really do look forward to future connections with you since you are the super connector. Definitely hooking you up with additional people as well that can help you to continue to build all these amazing things that you're doing. So whatever you need, please reach out to me. Let me know. I'm all in.
Thank you so much for having me. It was so fun to chat. Let's do it again on another platform or something. We got to keep conversations going. But yes, I'm so appreciative. And likewise, I think what you're doing here is amazing. It's so important. Like we said, the question is really important for everyone to think about. So I look forward to supporting you, this platform, and your work as well. So let's do it. I love it. Thank you for having me.
Thank you so much. And for you listening to this podcast, whether it is live or after we have hung up this video, make sure you go to my website and purchase your book on What Are You Sporting About. It is a Amazon.com bestseller. It will educate you, motivate you, and support you to your next level. Come on now. And we all want to be elevated. We all aim to be elevated. So again, my name is Sivonnia DeBarros, Protector of Athletes. I thank you so much for joining us live here for What Are You Sporting About with Danielle Berman. Have a great day. Ciao.